Welcome back to the Weekly Huddle YouTube channel. I'm your host, Owen, and today I just need to rant. The Bills lost the Bengals yesterday, depending on when this video comes out, this past Sunday. And I just need to go on and just rant about the overreactions that are happening to this game from people who are not fans, people who are fans, and all in between, popular, random people online. I just need to do a rant, so if you usually watch my stuff for draft content, feel free to skip this one. I just posted another new video either earlier today or yesterday, whenever this one comes out, discussing some draft take I had. So you can go check that one out. If not, I just need to rant a little bit, and I have a couple different takes here from the online social media sphere that I'll talk about, and then the final fourth of the video, I'll give my opinions and thoughts, all wrapped up concisely. So let's just go through. I'm just going to counter these ones. The first one we have here is a tweet from Wright, which we'll start there because he's, probably the most popular one of the three that we're going to talk about. Well, he's definitely the most popular one of the three we're going to talk about. And he's always the one that's like dunking on the Bills. Obviously, he's a Chiefs fan, and it's just kind of his shtick. He's a social media heel, and it's just a thing he's going to do to try to, gather eyes on his show. And once he's vindicated in one of his hotter takes or one of his stronger stances, he's going to go out there and do it. So this is what they do. It's what the media shit's all about. So his tweet reads, "This is the type of game that forces a team into some truly difficult offseason decisions. The Bills keep going further and further from true Super Bowl contention." Now, Nick's usual argument for why the Bills are not good is based solely around their quarterback. So I don't know if he's insinuating that they need to move off Josh Allen with this, because he's saying there's got to be truly difficult offseason decisions. And I'll get into my thoughts what they should do in the offseason at the end or towards the end of the video. But in Nick's case, he only ever when talking about the Bills talks about how their quarterback is not as good as the other quarterbacks, which means they're not going to get. So are you trying to insinuate that they should trade Josh Allen and restart the quarterback position, or what? You didn't specify in any responses following this what those moves need to be, what you would suggest for them to do. All you did was then proceeded to post all of your takes throughout the season about why Josh Allen sucks, and then that was your victory lap, was just posting about how much Josh Allen was bad and that you called it and that you knew he wasn't good and it was a roller coaster, this and that. So that's every response after this, I have to just assume is you talking about them moving off their quarterback, because that's the issue. I mean, their offense was the problem in this game. They only scored 10 points, and he didn't play great. But at the same time, his existence on this team, a 26-year-old quarterback, playing the way he plays, he is the fastest quarterback to 150 touchdowns in the league history. So, I mean, I don't know if this is what he's going for, is that they need to restart at the quarterback position. If he has any other insight, he does not give it. So that's what I have to assume he's talking about. And if that's the case, that's really fucking stupid. In reality, he's probably meaning the team in general, or just saying this to dunk on Bills fans and or parade around how right he was non-specifically. I didn't watch his live stream today, and I'm probably going to catch him talk about it on First Things First later today. But for now, this is all I have to go on, was this, and then the preceding tweets he did talk about the Bills, which was all Josh Allen centered. So apparently Nick Wright thinks Josh Allen is so bad the Bills need to move off of him. They want to keep their Super Bowl window open. We'll see. Now, this next take, I'm going to blur out the name because this person's not famous or anything like that. It's just I am in a Bills Mafia Facebook account, and this one came across my notifications after the game, and I read the first few lines of it, and that's what really got me, so I need to just go over this one. Like I said, I'm going to blur out the name and everything because I don't feel right, because there isn't a public figure or anything. He invites discussion, which we will have on this, but I'm not going to totally out them. If I'm Bean, I'm doing the following. Firing Leslie Frazier. All right, we'll stop there real quick. Leslie Frazier is consistently one of the best defensive coordinators recognized league-wide. If anything, you tweak the defensive scheme. You don't fire the defensive coordinator. He's been consistently considered one of the best defensive coordinators by people in the league, outside the league. Everyone consistently believes he's one of the best coordinators. He has had this defense in top 10 contention every single year, including this year where he had injuries to his biggest playmakers like Micah Hyde and Von Miller. So, no, you don't make it so that you don't take the scapegoat and fire the guy who has made your team's identity, which is mainly just defense, like that's successful. Like why would you want to fire that guy instead of just trying to make tweaks and adjustments? Why would you go with that big of a change and disrupt that much? Because the Chiefs, an elite offense, and the Bengals, an elite offense, scored points on you. That's gonna happen. You need the offense needs to take the brunt of the blame for this game loss, and not the defense, not Leslie Frazier. That's my first thing, and I'll elaborate more when we get to the end again. Next, not re-signing Edmonds, Poyer, Oliver. Poyer, I can see. Poyer is over 30, and you've been prepping this. You haven't given an extension yet. That's understandable. Edmonds is due for his big boy contract. He was in the same draft class as Josh Allen, which he's the quarterback of that defense. If in this guy's mind, he's restructuring the entire defense, yes, okay, sure. Go on and get rid of your quarterback, because then what's the point of keeping him there if you're going to restructure the entire thing? But personally, I've never seen what the scapegoat is with Edmonds. He was raw. He was 19 when he was drafted, maybe just freshly 20. He is like the same age this year as linebacker prospects coming out now. So, like, you can still consider him a rookie, really, with 4 or 5 years starting experience in the NFL. Why would you move off that guy? He still has youth. He still has room to grow. He's a physical freak. He causes defenses to adjust the way they play because of his length and athleticism. I would not move off of Edmonds. Poyer, like I said, is in contention. I think they should keep him just because their defense, if they stick with the same defense, relies on really well communication between their safeties. And Oliver, while he hasn't been consistently the best player, he's still been, a great NFL defensive tackle in flashes. Maybe not as consistent as you'd like. He's been available. He's been healthy for the most part in his career, and he's able to make those big splash plays. He just needs to be assisted more. He can't be the main focal point of your defensive line pressure, which is what we saw against the Bengals. So I disagree with maybe just Poyer is the only one I'll agree with. I disagree with Edmonds and Oliver. You do not get rid of those youthful staples of your core defensive structure, because if you get rid of them, who's replacing Oliver? He goes into more guys you should look into, but who's replacing Oliver? Who are you suggesting takes that spot? Jordan Phillips? 30-year-old Jordan Phillips? Who just had rotator cuff surgery? Daquan Jones? Tim Settle? No, none of them can do what Oliver does. So that one has baffled me. Edmonds, there's no one on your roster currently that can replace Edmonds. Your draft capital and other free agent acquisitions can go other places. Next thing. I shop the following players for good value, not a must trade. Okay. Gabe Davis. If you wanted to move off of Gabe Davis, I'd be fine. But I think what this year really proved for Gabe was for his first 2 years, he had John Brown opposite Stephon Diggs, who was more of that. John Brown is considered more of a deep threat guy, but he's also more of that route runner. He can play that kind of role. Then, instead of letting Gabe Davis, after his first year, fit into that role that John Brown left, they signed old-ass Emmanuel Sanders, who is more of that route-running outside receiver. That way, they can just flip their plays, and they can allow Allen to play both sides of the field with relatively same skill sets. This year, they thought Davis might be able to increase his route running enough to play that role, and clearly he wasn't that good. That's why they started relying on bringing John Brown back and Cole Beasley. So I am in favor of adding another receiver to make sure that Gabe Davis can fit into that one specific role that he succeeded in before, not being the opposite side of the field from Stephon Diggs, route runner guy, being that big body deep threat kind of guy. I don't think him not fitting in the role he fit in this year is grounds to trade him. So I don't think giving away a part of your high-flying offense is a great idea. Trey White. His confidence isn't there yet. He's not confident in his health and his knee after tearing it last year. I think another full offseason of recovery, playing a full season next year where he's not hurt, I think that'll be much better. They kind of weaned him into it, and when he came back, he wasn't the same player. If maybe next year he's not the same player again, then you can look at trading him. But if you want to fire Leslie Frazier and rebuild this defense, if you trade Trey White, who's your number one corner? Is it Kyrie Elam? Is it Christian Benford? Both guys who had up and down seasons, and one of which got hurt the rest of the season. Dane Jackson, more of a slot corner. Teron Johnson, no. Why would you ever get rid of that guy? At least after this 1 year where he's played half a season off a torn ACL. That doesn't make sense. Epinesa or Boogie Basham, I can see that because our main issue was pass rush without Von Miller. We couldn't get the Burrow without getting some artificial blitzing, and we couldn't get him with our main 4-man pressure system. So if you want to move off one of these guys who weren't getting it done or haven't been getting it done to boost maybe your running back room or get another corner or just free up more cap space to sign and re-sign your guys like Edmonds or Oliver or even Poyer, that makes sense. I'm fine with those two just because they haven't really panned out to be top-end starters or more rotational guys, which the Bills run a very heavy rotation system in their D-line to keep everybody fresh. So the more bodies you have in there, the better. So I'm okay with the or he put in here, one or the other. Probably Boogie just because he has another year on his contract further along than Epinesa does. But I do personally think Epinesa is a slightly better player. So I'm fine with either of those guys going. McKenzie, at this point, I think he only has like a couple years left on his contract. Either let it ride it out, wait until the offseason, the training camps come by, see if you can get Shakir to take a step up and replace him. But other than that, I think McKenzie should still be on the team. It gives you something that you don't have if Shakir doesn't step up as that gadget slot, designed run kind of guy. You don't really have that to replace it, and he was very successful under Dable's regime, which we'll get into that and the Ken Dorsey stuff in a little bit. But for right now, I think McKenzie has a role, and if you get rid of him, you have no one immediately to fill that role unless you go out and draft somebody, which I feel like that, at least early capital, should be used better in other places. Singletary in a sign and trade scenario, it's just not the NBA. Sign and trades don't really happen in the NFL. And if you're going to trade Singletary, you're not going to get much more than a 6th or 7th pick. And if Singletary gets a decent contract, you just get that in a comp pick. So a sign and trade I would not be okay with. That's kind of a really weird suggestion. If anything, you either just let him walk or you resign him. I would not try to sign him and then trade him to a contract that the other team did not agree to sign him to. Again, it's not the NBA. It's just something that you need to look into. And so now he goes, players that he's looking into. David Montgomery. Now, the Bears as a team are not a running back away, so I think they could... Yes? Next up is Austin Eckler, which just is never going to happen. Even if you traded Trey White, I don't think the Chargers are going to move off of him. And even then, I would not make that trade for the Bills personally. I think you can always find different running backs for not Trey White level investments. So that one, that's way out of here. Tony Pollard, I would have liked, but he's a free agent. So maybe you were suggesting signing him instead of Singletary. Except he just broke his leg last night. So unless they want to sign him and then have him for next year's playoff run, maybe. But I don't really see that one. Rashad Penny, also another free agent. This one is actually pretty interesting. And if they don't bring back Singletary, I'd be intrigued with them bringing in Penny. But he's more of a one-hit wonder. You don't want to invest a ton of assets into somebody who may not replicate what they did 2 years ago, because last year he was hurt most of the year. So, and the Seahawks were already planning life without him, even though he had a really good season. They drafted Kenneth Walker in the second round. And even I know Chris Carson retired, so maybe they were just playing him to be their 1B back. But that's not a guy you want to go out there and take a big swing on, especially because the team that had him previously, right after his best season as an NFL pro, they drafted a replacement, and then he got hurt. So I'm worried of Rashad Penny. And in theory, it's good, but I think realistically, it's not the best move. And then he ends up with serious help with O-line. And before I respond to that, he says, I know a ton of y'all may disagree due to some connection issues and players, and that's okay. This is my opinion, but feel free to respectfully debate. Now, the O-line thing, again, I'm going to get more in depth, and it's my personal thoughts and beliefs on what they should do. But yes, that one I agree with. They need some serious O-line help. And none of these things I'm saying are connection issues with the player. It's more just me looking at it logically and saying, Leslie Frazier, are you going to find a better defensive coordinator or a better defensive play caller right now on the market after, how many teams would kill to have Leslie Frazier as a D coordinator? Maybe he's not the best head coach anymore, which is why he doesn't really get interviews. But who would kill to have Leslie Frazier as defensive coordinator? 20 teams? Who has better? I can barely think of 12 teams that have better defensive coordinators or defenses in general than the Bills. So Leslie Frazier, you got to look at it that way. You can't look at it as, oh, he sucks. He's been bad for us. That's just you looking at it from your shallow, what's the word for it? Tunnel vision view of your own team from your fan base. So I don't think you should move off Leslie Frazier. You can't scapegoat out of this one for that guy. Edmonds and Oliver, two young core pieces to your defense. If you lose them, now I'm not attached to them. If you lose them, who is replacing them? Especially if you lose both, as you're suggesting. You're not re-signing either of them. Which, Oliver, he was a 2019 first-round pick. You still have the 5th-year option, so you don't have to worry about that until next year. Edmonds and Poyer. Poyer, I can understand if you want to go in a different direction and you think you already have his replacement or are planning to get his replacement immediately afterwards, that for cheaper or younger or something like that. But if you have the option to pay him and it's a reasonable contract because he wants to finish out his career here and he wants to win a Super Bowl when Micah Hyde comes back next year, then why not bring him back? He's still one of the better safeties in the league. That safety system relies heavily on communication and chemistry, which he has with Hyde, and he had to play with 4 different starters. He played with Hyde in the beginning of the year, Hamlin until the Bengals game, Dean Marlowe until this Bengals game, and then Jaquan Johnson, who was his backup. So it's not like they had great on-field chemistry, and that's where you get the misplays when it comes to the deep halves and deep zone things. So I'm not tied to Poyer emotionally. Maybe you can make the case he's the only one I'm kind of emotional for because I want to see those guys come back together and see what they can do. But I still don't think you have the answer on the roster right now, and then you're going to have to invest a serious capital in finding his replacement because that's a very important piece to the defense that McDermott wants to run if he doesn't totally overhaul his scheme. Oliver, again, you don't have his replacement on the field or on the roster. Who's going to be his replacement? You didn't suggest any replacements in your players to look into here. Do you know all the defensive tackles in this draft? I've watched a ton of them already. I don't think any of them are at an Oliver level right now. If you bring them in, you're at least year one having a drop. If it's not in talent, it's in production. If you're not getting Jalen Carter, you're not going to be getting somebody at the current level at Oliver is at. So I don't agree with that either, especially because you don't need to re-sign him technically this year. Shopping players, I'm not emotionally connected to Gabe Davis, maybe Trey White, but at the same time, I think you need to give him time. He came back from a major injury, and he was a great corner before that. So maybe next year, if he doesn't take that jump back to elite status, you can maybe look to move on to him because then you have a whole nother year to prep his departure. Because right now you don't have a guy on the roster to replace him. At Panasa Boogie, you do have guys on the roster that can replace him, and you've done a good job finding depth edge rushers to play the roles, the run defending, big body, reduce inside, and rush from the inside roles that you have. So I'm okay with losing either of those. McKenzie, same thing. You can find a guy who runs his same skill set. You just don't have him on the roster right now. So maybe Shakir steps up into that role, or you find somebody cheap to refill that in the later rounds of the draft, or cheaper. It's not as big of an investment as if you were trying to replace the 3 guys you said you weren't going to resign. Singletary, either or. Could be a big investment or a little investment to try to replace what he does. He's not overly great at anything, but he did turn it on a little bit at the end of the season there. All the guys you suggested, I think 3 of them are worth taking a peek into. Eckler, not at all, because that's not possible to even happen to come to us. The other 3 guys have question marks themselves, whether it's injury or, consistent success. Serious help with the line, I do think you hit on the head there. So that's from the Bills Mafia Facebook. This is probably going to be the biggest chunk of the video, but this was the most meaty suggestion of what they should do in the offseason. And for our last person we're reacting to is going to be the Buffalo Fanatics, which is probably the most popular Buffalo Bills fan page on Instagram. And this was they always do every quarter at the end of the games, they post the stats and the score and then give their thoughts on it. So this is what they said at the end of the game on Sunday. The season comes to a close. Really tough spot for this team to be in. This might have been a different game if we didn't spot the Bengals 14 points in the first quarter. Leslie Frazier is going to have to be the scapegoat. Absolutely got to go. The Bills almost need a mini rebuild, and it's going to be difficult because Brandon Beane hasn't done a great job drafting the last few years. Buffalo has a bunch of players that this coaching staff think highly of, but they're actually average in talent, a major flaw of McDermott. Still, weak O-lines and D-lines, this defense continues to play soft in the postseason. We're going to get into this much more over the offseason. Appreciate y'all following along. See you soon. Now, all right, let's break this down from different points. Leslie Frazier's scapegoat has to go. Just because you lost in a playoff game to one of the top, the Bengals and the Chiefs are the top 3 teams in the AFC. You lost to one of the other ones last year and one of the other ones this year, both of which are Super Bowl contenders just as you are. You lose to them 27-10. Sure, you give up 14 points in the first quarter, but your offense gave you 10 the entire first half. You're telling me your offense isn't capable of getting 14 in the first quarter on a good defense either? This is a great offense. Your defense came in ill-prepared for the scheme, or they came in with better adjustments from the last game than you did. Just because you let a great offense score 14 points in the first quarter and then 13 the rest of the game, you could still win that game. You can't rely on winning games when your offense only scores 10 points and then blame the defensive coordinator for not holding them to 9 or less. So that's absolute non-starter. I can't believe people are still suggesting that. I think it's just the emotions of the moment. They need a mini rebuild because Brandon Beane hasn't done a great job drafting the last few years. Look at the starters we have right now. Center Mitch Morse. Okay, he's older. Deion Dawkins, locked up, is probably our best offensive lineman. Right tackle, I'll give you. He's a younger guy who hasn't really stepped up in Spencer Brown, which they think highly of, but he is super talented. He's just very raw, and we knew that when we drafted him. Ryan Bates, right guard, swung a great trade for him. Like, it was like a random depth defensive lineman, and now he's our starting right guard, locked up, and I'm very high on Ryan Bates. Left guard is the one place you do need a significant improvement on, but that's because they keep trying to fix it and patch it with veterans. If he took his time and filled that with a rookie, saving cap space not only, and also putting in youth and a better overall talent, I think his offensive line would be fine, and if Spencer Brown develops. So the offensive line is not there. Josh Allen, top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Maybe people are going to start arguing top 10 now because of this run at the end of the season, but I still think he's top 5. Diggs, Davis. They brought in Khalil Shakir, who everyone has been pretty high on every time he touches the football, so I don't know where you're going with that when it comes to the receiving core. Dawson Knox has turned it on as a tight end. You have, now let's go to the defense, Ed Oliver, who is one of your stalwarts on the defensive line. And yes, maybe the rest of the defensive line when it comes to Epinesa, Boogie Basham, and some of these other guys that they've drafted have not panned out. You can retool that. They replaced all but one player on their defensive line, I think it was 2 years ago. Maybe even this past year, because they kept Epinesa, Boogie, Oliver. They replaced Harrison Phillips. They brought in Von Miller. They replaced Jerry Hughes. They replaced Mario Addison. They can turn that over, and they've shown in the past to do so. And when Von Miller was healthy, this D-line was good. Maybe you need another complementary piece, but you got Greg Rousseau, who has been playing hurt since like halfway through the season. I think the D-line, when healthy, is fine, and you can supplement that by getting in rookies or young, cheap veterans, like you found in Jordan Phillips back when they first added him to the team, to supplement and fill out that depth. I think the D-line is fine. They maybe need a little bit of tweaks there. The linebacking core, Matt Milano, all-pro. Tremaine Edmonds is still a very good linebacker, if not still a little raw, and he's still young. So I don't know where you're going with that part. Where is this failure of drafting? Because D-line seems fine. Milano, a 5th-round draft pick, is an all-pro. DBs, Tre'Davious White, Rocky's half of the season because he didn't play the first half. I understand that. We'll see what happens when he comes back. Dane Jackson, a 6th, 7th-round pick who stepped in when Trey White got hurt and played admirably and is a good depth corner for you. That's bad drafting? Kari Elam, you know what? Book's still out on him right now. He was a rookie. Same thing with Christian Benford. But both showed promise, if not a rookie seasons. Teron Johnson, out of Weber State, however you want to pronounce it, 6th, 7th round pick. That's a failure of drafting. They found Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer as cheap veteran options their first year in office. You don't think they can do that again? And they've been trying to draft and develop guys to be their replacements. Are they going to be as good as those two in their primes? Probably not. But we don't know yet. So I don't know where this assumption is that they're failing at drafting. That I was baffled by that one, and that's what really this specific Instagram post is what made me want to make this video, because this was baffling to me. Buffalo has a bunch of players that this coaching staff thinks highly of, but they're actually average in talent, a major flaw of McDermott. If you talk about Epinesa and Boogie, I can see that. Same thing with like Spencer Brown, maybe, because he's still super raw. But I just highlighted their entire starting 22. Who are you referencing here? Be more specific. Maybe I have to wait for them to post more content, but I don't think that is true either. There's some that you can maybe see, maybe Dane Jackson, maybe Tremaine Edmonds if he's going there, but he still is a bunch of talent athletically that you can't really make the case that they're not high in talent, maybe not high in intangibles, but that can be coached up. weak O-line, weak D-lines, I have highlighted why I kind of agree on that. This defense continues to play soft in the postseason. Ravens game last year in the windstorm. Ravens have always been considered to have great defenses. You out-defensed their defense. The Dolphins game, they were set up with 3 turnovers that put them on short fields after having just gotten off the field. Josh Allen had turned the ball over twice in 3 plays. They're gassed, they're winded, and then they let up 9 points in the first couple turnovers. I think they let up 2 field goals, maybe a touchdown. I can't really remember the game at this moment. But it was like they did their job. They just had to keep going out there, and it was coming off a bunch of turnovers. I don't understand how that's the defense playing soft. They played with heart after having one of their players go down with a goddamn heart attack or just cardiac arrest after having one of their team captains blow their knee out a year after one of their other team captains blowing their knee out. It was a tough season, and I've seen people take the video of Matt Milano saying there wasn't a lot of, momentum and a lot of energy on the sideline, and then they're saying that's a fault on the coaching system. When you have momentum in a game, it's from big plays, big stops, and when you're playing another team that is just getting the ball to bounce the way they want, Gabe Davis had a drop, the other team had made just really key, good defensive plays that stunted the offense, and you're not able to come up with a lucky bounce, a fumble, a good turnover, a misread by the quarterback. That's going to shift momentum. And if you can never get any traction for momentum, there's going to be no energy. I don't see how that's a failure on coaching staff in general. I think that's more of how the game played out and just being outplayed on to this day. And then, appreciate y'all. See you soon. I very much disagree with what they said here. And let me go into now what I think this offseason needs to look like for the Buffalo Bills. They do need to tweak their defensive system. Leslie Frazier, unless he's like, I'm keeping my system or I'm gone, he should still be here. McDermott needs to sit down and they need to look at what the film from this past year and find the games they did good in, see what they did. See if it's a fact that they were just a lot better and more deep of a team. Because remember, this team not even 2 months ago was being talked about as one of the deepest in the NFL, but the Bean can't draft apparently. And all these guys aren't deserving of being kept on the team and need to be traded, all the top starters. But anyway, you need to see what teams you beat just by out-talenting and what teams you beat schematically. What times you lost schematically. And you need to make adjustments. Because there's been a trending topic now about the death of the deep 2 split safety system. And when you had Hyde and Poyer, you were able to run that effectively. Lots of cover 4, cover 2, hiding coverages, disguising them, make it look like it was going to be single high, and then go back to the split to prevent deep plays. When you don't have those 2 elite guys back at the safety position, and the communication and the chemistry is there, which Poyer mentioned on the Pat McAfee show beginning of the season after the Rams game, you need that communication. You need that elite chemistry. They lost that this season, and their defense took a dip. It did not get bad. It took a dip. So you need to be more flexible in case of injuries, which I think does need to be changed. That needs to be tweaked. You need to add some cheaper rookies. Maybe Jordan Phillips wants to come back on a cheaper deal, that's fine. But Shaq Lawson should be gone. One of Boogie or Epinesa probably should be gone and replaced with somebody with probably a higher upside. You have your entrenched starters. You have Vaughn, you have Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Taquan Jones. The interior is fine right now. Jordan Phillips, Ed Oliver, Tim Settle, Taquan Jones. That's fine. It's not elite. You're hoping Ed Oliver take another step. Tim Settle may be able to get some more playing time. Your edge rushers, you have your starters in Rousseau and Miller. And while Miller's out, play Epinesa or Boogie, whichever one you keep. Draft some high upside backups to maybe take over once Von Miller retires. Okay, that's what you should do on the D-line. D-line's been fine. DBs, continue investing in cornerback, but try to invest highly in safety, especially if you don't bring back Poyer. Even if you do bring back Poyer, you can get a Brian Branch, who might not be there this year in the draft class, but you got guys like Antonio Johnson, Texas A&M. You have former Northwestern safety, current Notre Dame safety, current Brandon Joseph, who showed a lot of flashes of a good safety in coverage, but had some struggles in the run defense. There's Jordan Battle is a great strong safety prospect. I was high on Talanoa Hufanga a couple of drafts ago, and now he's like the best safety graded out in the NFL. And Jordan Battle reminds me a lot of him. Maybe not as smooth of an athlete, but I think that can be a comparable guy to take over for Poyer. And even if you bring Poyer back and you draft one of these safeties, play him in the slot. Play him as your big nickel, which you like to run a lot in this McDermott system. You can find playing time for that guy. So That's what you need to do for the defense. Offense, whether it's a reliable veteran or draft a guy who maybe isn't the best athletically but is a good route runner to be on the outside opposite Diggs and allow Davis to move around the offense and be that deep threat, big body target down the field. And that's where he succeeds. That's where he succeeded last year. He succeeded the year before that. If you don't think Shakir can step up into the McKenzie role, then sign a gadget guy, draft a dude in the 5th, 6th round who doesn't have prototypical size, but come in and play that gadget role. Kind of like last year, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, with Calvin Austin Jr., or the third from Memphis, that kind of guy. You bring them in, and let's see if they can take that role over. If not, I think McKenzie's deal is fine. The offensive line is the main point of contention. Roger Saffold was a Band-Aid fix. You need to get a legitimate left guard prospect. I think that's where the first-round pick needs to go to. Maybe it's Osiris Torrance. Maybe it's maybe not in the first round, but Andrew Voorhees is out there if you can switch him to left guard. There's opportunities to improve that left guard spot, which you need to take. Now, I would prefer you draft them to replace it, because Eitbucker isn't making it work, I don't think. And you give draft a replacement. It's cheaper, younger, and then you can potentially look to move that money other places probably for resigning your defensive starters. Quarterback, you're set. Our Super Bowl window is open because of the quarterback. Running backs, I think their core is fine. I think they need to be utilized better. But if you need to add a guy, like a guy in the draft falls to you and you're like, there's no way we could pass on this guy, or someone from a free agency window comes in and you're like, there's no way we could pass on that guy either for a good contract, fine. I'm not the biggest in investing in running back, but fine. Ken Dorsey is only in his rookie. He's a rookie for calling plays in this offense. He was around for Dable, yes. But I remember, I was there, and I was one of the ones calling for his head. Dable's first year as offensive coordinator. So Allen's rookie year, 2018, he was offensive coordinator. His rookie year of calling play calls, 6-10. People were calling for his head immediately. 2019, 10-6 year. People were still calling for his head because we lost in the playoff game to the Houston Texans. Then the next year, 13-3, he was seen as, I think he was assistant of the year. And Josh Allen took a step to becoming an MVP candidate. Dorsey, in his rookie year of calling plays, had one of the most dominant offenses in the first half of the season. It fell off because people started adjusting to how he called plays, but he was still a rookie play caller. If we gave up on Brian Dable after the first year, what the hell would have happened the last 2 seasons? Dable is now succeeding with the Giants, and the people are praising him as coach of the year because what he did to Daniel Jones. You wanted to give up on that guy we wanted to give up on that guy after 1 and 2 seasons when we made the playoffs. Give Dorsey time to adjust, get used to calling plays at NFL level. Now he has a full offseason of games that he called that he can go back and look at. The offense will get better under Dorsey. He'll improve more as a play caller. Upgrade the offensive line. Get a guy to complement Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. And then retool the defensive line and add to your secondary. You don't need to make drastic changes this year. You lost the AFC Championship game, divisional round. Forget what the national media is saying. This is a good team. This team will still be in consideration when the next year's stats come out or the odds come out for next year's Super Bowl. They will be one of the top 5 teams in those Super Bowl statistics. Mark my word on that. You do not need to make major changes to this team. You need to tweak. You need to have injury luck, and you need to maybe change a little bit up schematically. Add some depth fleet pieces, rebuild or build up your depth cheaply to replace the eventual starters. I don't believe that we need to call for everybody said. That's what I would do. That's what I think they should do. That's what I think they are going to do. I think they're not going to make any drastic changes because this is a smart regime. They've shown to be smart. They've built this team up who was terrible for 17 straight years. Then as soon as they got here, turned it around. The only year they were bad was when they had a rookie, raw as shit quarterback with a brand new offensive coordinator. And they still won 6-10. I don't see where people are freaking out about. We'll see what happens. I hope they don't give in to the pressure from what other people are saying and just stick to their guns because I think they're going to be right, and I think that's what they should do. This is probably going to be super long, but this is my extended rant on the Bills and other people and what they're talking about the Bills. I have just as much qualifications as everybody else saying things. I just think after one loss in a divisional round game that you weren't guaranteed to win. It's not like you were going to be guaranteed. Like, it's not like you were the overwhelming favorites to win this game. If you lost to the Bengals, it's like if you lost to Skylar Thompson last week. No, you don't need to be this drastic. Thanks for watching. I'm hoping to have a podcast out soon with Caleb from the Dynasty Index. Well, I'll actually message him right after this, but go Bills. I'm going to dive super hard into draft season now with my content. There's not really much to talk about and outside of that. So, and XFL starting in April, or in February, actually. So we'll talk about that as well. So going to have a little bit of gear shift, and that's just my final wrap-up on the Bills season. Again, I don't expect anybody to watch this, but if you do, enjoy. Peace.